Did you know that Liana Adrong is the first Montagnard woman to be an executive director of a large Montagnard organization in the United States? If you didn't know, I invite you to watch the rest of this video so you can learn about her story as a refugee from Vietnam coming to the United States in 1996, and also her education and her passions to help the Montagnard refugees as well as other refugees in North Carolina. So please watch the entire video so you don't miss anything. By the way, if this is your first time watching my video, I welcome you to the Montagnard channel. Also, everybody, if you like this video, please press that like button, subscribe to the channel, and also share it with others so that they can also benefit from a bunch of videos that we have on the channel. Now, Liana gonna tell you the rest of her story. Let's dive in.
So my father served in the U.S. Army. So actually, a couple weeks ago, because I have a question, right? My father never talked about his time back in the day. We know that he was like a teacher or principal of a school. There was one of his students that lived in Greensboro, like, yeah, your dad was my teacher. But we didn't never heard of a story of my dad, how what was his part with the U.S. Special Forces back then. So I actually was talking to one of my older sister a couple weeks ago. She was like, yeah, you see, it's like our father, when he was arrested, he knew they were coming for him to arrest him. So he was trying to hide all the weapon, the grenade and all the guns and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then, to just hide it so he can get away from the Viet Cong. So my sister confirmed that, she said, yeah, my dad served. She doesn't know exactly how many years, but he did serve, and that's how he was arrested. So he served 7 years in prison, and back in like 95 or something, he got a letter that said, like, if you've served more than 3 years in prison, you can do the paperwork to go to America as refugee. So I came with my parents to the U.S. as refugee in 1996. To be exact, like September 1996, we came to the U.S. and under the HO program. Right. We call it UNHO, right? That's what we call it. We came through that, and with working with the community, right, helping family and stuff like that. That's one of the reasons also it kind of draw me into the organization. Okay, so the story goes, I don't know how I found social work. Growing up, I think a few years ago, I went back to my yearbook and found a letter that I wrote to myself. Like, in my English class, the teacher asked, like, wrote a letter to your future self. Where will you be 10 years from now? So in my letter, I wanted to be a nurse. Wow. I wrote that I wanted to be a nurse. After graduating high school, I think I started. I got my CNA, but it wasn't a path that I wanted to go. So I took a couple years off from college, just working, started a family, and then after I have 2 kids, I decided to go back to school. And I don't really know how I found social work, but when I finally applied and got into the program, I guess like I found my people. I found my people. So I graduated from UNCG with my Bachelor in social work. We were in a joint program with the North Carolina A&T and UNCG. Some of my friends that I graduated with are still my friend now. This is like 10 years later. We all work in different agency and still connect, whether it's through work or, so we still connect through professionally and personal as well, hang out every once in a while. So after I graduated with my undergrad, I was looking for a job everywhere, basically applying here and there, and a position open at the Montagnard Dega Association, and I applied for at MDA, and also applied for a job at Guilford County School. So just apply and then waiting, and after a while of waiting, I got 2 email or call, I cannot remember, on the same day that there was a job offer.
Oh,
You
wow.
know, then I was like trying to think about where should I go, where do I want to go to work, and I wanted to work at some place where I can grow and learn and be able to do something that I'm passionate about. I used to work for Guilford County School as an interpreter back in 2007 and 2008, but I just feel like it wasn't a lot of room for improvement or to grow as far as like, can you move up, a ladder. So I decided to take the position at MDA because I just feel like growing up, we were doing a lot of like culture preservation thing, whether it's through dance or music in classes and stuff like that. So I wanted to carry that on. And, to me, it's like culture preservation, identity, knowing who we are is very important. And I want to make sure that my children know who their grandparents are, know who their parents are, that way they growing up, they don't just forget who they are. So that's why I'm very passionate about the work that I do in terms of culture preservation and also helping the community. So I started working at the association in 2017. I was a caseworker / like vocational instructor. So the other part of my job was teaching sewing, which is a skill that I never had. So when I took the position, I was like, you have to teach a sewing class. I was like, okay. So I went and learned. MDA hired teacher, and they hired teacher to teach me for a couple weeks or a couple months, and then I self-taught a lot of things. So we partnered with Industry of the Blind back then. So I went to the company like every day learning, teaching, learning different machine. So I was teaching class and then also do like administrative stuff, case management stuff. And then in 2000, I believe 21 is when Dr. Isiu Halong retired. And the position was open, and the board was like, apply because we have to hire a Montagnard person. And if no one else is applying, you're the only candidate, basically, And then they're like, then you can hire another person to take your position. So I decided to apply for that because I was already doing a lot of director job anyway because Isiu was a part-time. So I was doing a lot of that job already. So I had a lot of experience. So I started that when he retired in 2021, I believe. I can't remember exact. I might get the year wrong, but somewhere around there, 21 or 22.
You told me already.
Yeah, 21?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, and then back then when I started working at MDA, we were only operating on a very low budget, just one program basically. But I think for many years, MDA tried to keep its door open because, the board or NACU, they didn't want it to close the office because our elders still come to the office like, read my letter or help me make a doctor appointment or with different things. So they didn't want to close it down, so they kept the organization going even though it was a lot of funding got cut. They kept it going. So when I came in, I think my job was like, how can we bring it up to the new century kind of thing. So that's kind of what I've been doing in the past few years. Is just we collaborate with different partners. We continue our funding from the state office with our refugee program. So our refugee program is funded by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, the refugee program, which allow us to serve anyone, any ethnicity or anyone from any country as long as they have the refugee status. So it has to be a refugee from first come to up to 5 years. So that program allow us to work with anyone. And then we have other funding where it's from like private foundation and stuff like that. So that's where we're focusing more on our community, because people have been here more than 5 years, where do they, those people still need services. So those private foundation funding allow us to work with our community member who's been here longer than 5 years, and also our young people. We have a youth program that are like language classes, dance, music, and stuff like that. So those are more private foundation that allow us to, work on the culture preservation pieces. Yeah.
And beside the Montagnards, which other refugee community that you guys are supporting now?
So I think when with me working with the university or Dr. Morrison and Andrew and other, I came across or met a lot of new people from other organization or from other community. So during COVID is kind of when we came together. You know, we were I connected. I don't remember exactly how we got connected with other group, but I was an intern during my master program. It was during COVID, so I was an intern at Mustard Seed Community Health Clinic, and I met a young man named Tire, and he was from the Karenni community. He was also like an intern at the community health center with Mustard Seed. So I connected with him, and when he graduated, he connected me with other young people from his community. So we've been working with the Karenni community since the pandemic, you know, just with vaccine outreach or just COVID outreach, just safety outreach and stuff like that. So we've been working with them, and we got by collaborating together because they didn't have a 501c3, so they couldn't apply for funding, you know. So we were able to let's go on a grant together, and you know, and then they were able to hire like a community health worker from their community and put people through training and stuff like that. That's kind of how we've been working with the Karenni community in Winston-Salem. They are now in the process of getting their own 501c3. So, and they have a lot of support. Since then, they've been getting a lot of grants. You know, we kind of been mentoring them through that way. They have a lot of great young people. And then we also work with one of our current partner that we work with now, the Bhutanese community, the young people there, just putting people do different training, send them to conferences and things like that the way they learn, and then that's how they go back and help their community. Another partner we work is with Montagnard Dega Gospel Mission. They serve mostly East African, I believe, or they call it the Swahili community. So that's another community we currently work with. And one of the program we have currently is the mental health program. It's like a caregiver mental health program. We launched that in May. So that's going to be for the next year and a half working together. I think, I find it, it's very important for us to be able to collaborate with other partners beside, just working by ourselves all the time. Because, thinking from a funder perspective or thinking from an executive director perspective is we can working with other group, we support each other, we learn from each other, that way we can see things from different perspective, versus if we're just be in our own little bubble, then we can't really grow, we can't really go anywhere, so that's why for me it's those partnership is very important. Yeah.
Also, when did you change the name from MDA or Montagnard Dega Association to Montagnard Associations of North Carolina?
So, I think 2 years ago, back in 86, 87, when MDA first started, they used to have an office in Charlotte. And they used to serve the people there. But later, about 10 years later, they closed down the Charlotte office because of funding cut, but they kept the Greensboro office. So, and the goal that I have, or when I was in college, we formed a group called the Montagnard American Organization.
Right.
It was the youth group.
I see.
Yeah. So a youth group we formed in 2015, Montagnard American Organization. It was a group of students at UNCG, a group of students from Guilford College. We got together and hey, we want to form a student organization, to do something for the youth. And when we graduated, we kept the name. So our Montagnard American Organization is a group youth, is a branch under MDA. So we just merged it together. And then, going back to think about, hey, we used to have an office in Charlotte, we wanted to make the resources available to other people in our community in different part of North Carolina, because we would have people said, you guys have that, why don't we not have this in Charlotte, why would we not have this in Raleigh, you know? And so we also would get people with citizenship application, or wanted us to connect them or help them. We would get people from Charlotte and Raleigh calling us or asking us to go help them for an interview, you know. And I was like, it makes sense to restart the chapter that they already had a long time ago, 30 years, 35 years ago, right? So we've just been thinking about like, okay, we just need funding, we need, you know, so we've been working with a lot of young people from the Raleigh and Charlotte area. And then when we got a little funding to hire Zena in Raleigh, we're like, hey, you know, so we hired a teacher, like, you know, we're like, okay, we don't want to duplicate services that other organizations already have. So we decided, let's start with culture preservation program, because the Janarde used to be in Raleigh, but all those people like grew up, got their own family and stuff like that. We're like, how about we start a culture preservation program for the young people? So we hired Zena, and she volunteered with us first. We hired her part-time, and then a couple teachers to teach that the dance class in Raleigh. That's kind of how we started there. So you know, we reopened that and like, okay, well, it makes sense to rename ourselves, you know, instead of Montagnard Dega Association, how about we rename ourselves? And we got together with the board and other staff member, like, how about Montagnard Association of North Carolina? Now we want to serve everybody in North Carolina, you know, we're going to have different chapter and stuff like that. I think being the executive director at a nonprofit organization in our community, you know, I take it like as a big accomplishment as a woman to be in this role, because if you look at our community, it's mostly men, you know, churches leader, right? If you go to all the churches, all the leader are men. You don't see women in leadership role. And I think a lot of the young people now are like younger than me. You know, a lot of the women are taking on the leadership role in this kind of work, whether it's, you know, they are at different organizations, not here, but at different organizations. But I think that is like the stepping stone for us to, you know, be like more in equality in terms of our community, because it's always been guys, it's always been men who takes on the leadership, you know. So. Yeah.
And highlights a few of the services that you provide to the Montagnards and maybe other refugee community.
So we definitely, so we offer different services, and because also we have different funding, right? Each funding or program tailored to a certain group or anything like that. For example, our refugee program, I don't know if you can see this, right? Our refugee support services, that's anyone for client who's been here from the first time they arrive to up to 5 years, right? It's more restricted funding. And then we have like civic engagement, you know, just helping people to register to vote, or helping people to make sure they have transportation to go voting, and sharing nonpartisan voting voting information, those kind of things we offer. Help is big for us. Help is like one of our top 10 help, and now we included like mental health, right? Because in our community, mental health is something that we don't talk about, and a lot of people in our community suffer with mental health issues, whether it's addiction or, you know, depression, anxiety, or different you know, diagnoses that they might have. And a lot of people, you know, whether they might be on medication or not, but a lot of them don't utilize the therapy or counseling, stuff like that. So now we partner with UNCG to offer like counseling session one-on-one. And on our end, we're working on to do that as well in the fall. And also we're gonna have like a Saturday mini clinic just for like basic screening, you know. From the basic screening where we're gonna have Montagnard nurses like placed here every Saturday, and then based on that screening, then she or he can refer the client to the different programs that we have. We also have great youth program. We have annual conference under our youth program. Under our youth program is also our culture preservation program. That's where you see all the dancing, all the music from different events, different shows. So those are some of the highlights for our program. Also, with the mental health program, we have different things. We do like arts or exercise or sport for young people, those kind of things. So there's a lot of things going on. Just really follow us like on social media. So Facebook and Instagram is where you see a lot of things, where we're going to post a lot of information about the changes, because we don't have the same program every year, every semester. It changes. Our program changes based on our funding, and also a lot of these programs are funding. When we apply for the funding, is based on like our research that we have done in the past, or based on the needs that we hear from the community. From the community, like community would come to us and say, "Hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?" And we're like, "Oh, that's a great idea. Let's try to find some money to do that."
Yeah.
So that's basically how we come up with the program and some of the program highlights.
Yeah. About how many staffs and volunteers do you have?
Well, volunteer, the number of volunteers depends.
Right. Okay.
Actually, I just sent a reporting. I don't have my phone with me, but I just sent a reporting to do our taxes this year and have to report the number of volunteer in the like 300 or 400, because there's people who volunteer at events, and there are parents who volunteer weekly. Like for example, our culture preservation class, we want the parent to be involved, so we ask them like, "Hey, can you volunteer this week? Can you volunteer that week?" So we rotate them, and then when we have an event, we have a lot of people who volunteer. So those, but they're count. Volunteer.
Right.
We cannot do without volunteer.
Yeah.
Staff member, including part-time, and we also have like contractor, like consultant. We call them consultant. Who just like kind of we hire them to advise us on different things and stuff like that. We don't count them as staff. But I just did the payroll this morning. We have part-time and full-time. We have 18.
Okay.
18. So we went from 3 to 18.
Oh wow, that's really great.
So those are 18 people on the payroll right now.
And what kind of positions do they have?
Yes. So the different position we have. A lot of our staff wear different hats. They got multiple roles, right? We have the refugee support services. Also with our refugee support services, we also have Afghan refugee support services. So we have those. Their title would be like case management employment specialist, because we really focus on case management and employment for those programs. Because when you first come, people really need to know how to navigate things, how to apply for a job, how to do this and do that. So they really focus on that. And then we have like, for example, Sachi is our youth program director / our health program coordinator, and Ying is under our mental health program coordinator. So we just have those different positions for different but they also do a lot of different things. All of our staff like do 10 different things. We also we are our own marketing person, we are all our own communication person.
Wow.
Fundraiser person. We do it all.
Okay.
If you like, with bigger organization, people are able to hire like a marketing, an IT person. Then we don't. So we utilize each other's skill. And all of our staff have multiple skill sets. So.
Okay.
But I think there are still needs in our community, especially in the elder population and the youth population. Especially the young people, who are born here. Sometimes some of them, not all, might be confused of like, who am I, where do I go, those kind of things. I want to connect with my people, right, and stuff like that. So I think like just I really encourage parents to like enroll your student, enroll your children in different classes that we have, or also people to like give back, right? If you have time to volunteer at our events, and if not, think about a monetary donation. Our funding don't just come, the funding don't, people don't just give us the funding. Like we have, like my job, I have to get the money to keep the staff afloat, in order for us to be able to have staff people to work to help people, we have to get the money, right? Yeah. So we're not asking people to like give us money all the time, but one of the dreams that we have right now is to build the community wellness center, because we have been renting for like 35 years. If one of our goals is to keep passing down the organization to the next generation, where we keep our culture preservation program going, then we need to have something that we own ourselves. So right now, we're in the mission to raise $500,000 to secure this property, this land where we want to build our community center. And I think if I encourage people to volunteer. If you don't have time to volunteer, I encourage people to make a pledge. They can make a pledge online or just mail a check to our office. So they can be in the wall of fame. We're gonna have a wall of fame for the wall where the people who contributed to start this organization. We're doing this for our children, right? Because I think eventually, like, I don't want to be in this position forever. I want to train somebody's, the next people who want to take over, or next young people who want to learn about this work, Yeah.
Great. I want to thank Lyanna for taking her time and energy to share her story with the rest of us. And everybody, if you like this video, click like, subscribe to the channel, and also share it with others so that others can also learn different things about our people. Lastly, I want to dedicate this video to all the Montagnards and non-Montagnards who have been helping our people for decades. Thank you so much for your service to our community. Bye-bye.